From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicky Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Dominating with Dawson.
It's story time. So
All right.
we started our team and everything was going along fine. We go to our first race, no problem. We go to our second race, we decide 2 cars. Still relatively no problem.
Mhm.
Then we start going to learn how to autocross. Now we've got problems because now our car keeps breaking.
Really?
It does, because I realized that our people are now driving in a lemons race like it's an autocross. So instead of being
Okay. I
a
gotcha.
30-second sprint around some cones, we are now trying to drive autocross style in
got
an
it.
endurance type race. And I think that there's a difference between, let's say, an autocross being 30, 60 seconds, somewhere around there, and something like a time attack or a sprint race, which is like 20, 30 minutes. And what we do, which is endurance racing. And I think there's a difference in the way that the driver should drive or adapt to those different. And I could be wrong. Am I wrong? I'm usually wrong. Vicky's here, so
No.
I'm definitely wrong.
I feel like maybe you're trying to use me to yell at somebody on your team. If that's the case, let's go ahead and talk about that. But
Nope.
So what you're saying is that you all went and did a couple of lemons races. Thought that was fun. Let's hone our skills and go to some autocross events. Did that separately. Then
Yes.
you returned to endurance racing, and all of a sudden everybody was bonsai crazy, trying to knock cones over and trying to hit a return in like 1,000,000 miles an hour, right?
Well, a little bit. And I think the funniest response I got was when we went to our first HPDE and Vicky learns how to go around the track, and she's learning the line, and she gets there and she comes back from the HPD and she's all confident, and she comes back from the HPD and she's on the radio screaming at us like, "These people don't know where the line is. What are they doing?"
Where are they
It's
going? Where are
true.
these idiots going?
What the heck?
And I'm like,
These
2 weeks ago, you
fools.
didn't know there was a line. So,
I
you know.
know. There's
So-
nobody giving me the hands. There's no handwork going on. What the heck?
So I just think there's a difference in style and a difference in
Sure.
approach. And you can take some things from autocross, but don't drive an autocross style for the entire race. And same thing with endurance racing. You don't apply that to an autocross because,
Yeah, you'd be really slow in an autocross if you applied all the patience and sort of measured approach stuff you learn in an endurance race. You would be a pretty slack autocrosser in your class, probably, because the two things do require a different approach. With autocross, you're trying to hit the maximum amount of grip you can get, plus a little bit with your tires every single turn, slalom, whatever they call those things, parking boxes,
Chicago box.
retrograde deep dish slapper pile or whatever. I don't know what they are, but it requires a ton of skill, and it requires a great timing, and it requires you getting your tires really hot while you just slam a car around a course for, like you said, 30 seconds to a minute 20 seconds would be a really long course, I think, for autocross. So yeah, it's an entirely different set of skills. It would be like, almost analogous to saying, like, I'm going to go out and drive a road course the same way I drive a dirt track, oval stock car, something like that. I mean, they're very different approaches. So yeah, I certainly wouldn't go do an autocross event and think, like, I've learned everything I need to know about turning left and right, and I'm going to go hit it on the endurance racing course.
So is it more the abruptness of the steering input, or is it the braking? Because I can't see the braking being terribly different. If you're doing threshold braking, you're doing threshold braking. But where would the refinement be to make a transition? Because we probably have listeners who are autocross people that may be looking to do this, and we probably have people who are time trials who are looking to do endurance racing, or endurance people who are looking to say, hey, it's especially with all the stuff going on, I need to get on a track. There's an autocross. I can go do that.
Right.
What would there's certain things in common, but then you got to kind of tweak the recipe a little bit, a little bit of salt here and a little bit of pepper over there. But
well, with autocross, you have to try to maximize every single thing because you don't have much time when you're trying to differentiate yourself from the rest of your class. So you're going to go maximum attack, but also if the course is set up in the right way, it's an opportunity for you to sling a car as hard as you possibly could at a turn, where if things go wrong, you're just going to spin out and knock a couple of cones over. So the consequence level is very low. So that's also a factor in how fast you can try to sling it around out there. Because the worst thing you're going to do is some dude is going to have to hike up his cargo shorts and go, stand up a cone that you knocked over.
Right.
So that's sort of my take on autocross. Also, full disclosure, I'm a terrible autocrosser. I made myself do it for a year after I got an oval track go-karting just to make sure I kind of knew what out of control and Miata felt like. But I was like, I'm going to do this for a year and move on to, doing track days and hopefully eventually racing, which luckily panned out. But yeah, I'm a horrible autocrosser. So that's part of my bias against it. But I'm sure if I had showed up and I was a superstar, you'd see me trying to run nationals and never even gotten all the way to the road course. But yes, that's part of my bias is definitely that I'm just not good at it. But the people who are they go out there and they're really dedicated to walking the course, 4 or 5 times before the event starts, and they're running the whole course in their head with their eyes closed. And you see them making little motions, little shifting and steering motions. So those are the folks who are really ascetic autocross devotees, but that's never going to be me. But I've done it. I did it for a year and moved on to road racing stuff. So eventually I started doing. I did a season or 2 of time trial stuff too. Is that something you guys have tried or want to talk about?
We haven't tried it yet. It's on the list. Every time we go to one that has it offered, we're always in the HPDE, so we're already spoken for. But it does look like fun.
Right. I got a chance to do it a little bit with NASA and NASA Mid-Atlantic, and it was when I was instructing, and they would let you just do it for free if you were instructing. So it was a little bit of, I think we always had 2 students, so that's a pretty full schedule. And then I would also try to do time trial on top of that. So I didn't have a ton of time for like car setup stuff, but it was a lot of fun. And in that case, the time trial competition is sort of adjacent to racing, but not exactly. Like if I was close to somebody who had a similar pace as me, we would try to run sort of together on the straightaways where we could game the system a little bit, maybe draft a little bit, get a couple miles an hour. But when it came to the turns, we weren't trying to race each other. We were just sort of trying to find which one of us would be better to go through that set of turns to maximize both of our lap time. So a lot of times it was a lot of fun because you sort of team up with somebody, even if it came down to a little bump drafting, something like that. But whatever you could do to get fast, if you kind of got to know somebody in the paddock who, like for me, it was me with my Miata, and then there was another guy who had an EG Civic, that sort of Easter egg shaped Civic from the early 90s. He had an EG Civic, so he had a little bit more power than me, so we'd always have to be a little bit faster at the end of the straightaway. So I'd make sure to be trying to pull a draft off of him in the straightaways, and then through the corners I would try to end up ahead of him. So we would usually team up and be a little bit faster than we would have been by ourselves. So that was sort of my experience with time trial racing. A lot of fun, but you are still trying to kind of really max out your own lap time while trying to stay off of everybody around you. Whereas that would be different in the racing where you're just trying to work your way through traffic. I would try to figure out how to work that guy over with the Honda and run away from him in the corners so we weren't trying to use each other for straightaway speed.
So is the difference between the let's say the 3 of these styles, is it really that the 2 shorter durations are really driving at 10 tenths or 10.1 tenths and we're less, or is it the sheer number of turns? Because you can't go around a turn at 10.1 tenths 500 times in a weekend and not miss one. I'm trying to figure out how.
Yeah, that's part of it. Part of it is the amount of risk that's associated with what you're doing dictates how hard you can hit it. So with an autocross, there's not that much risk because the worst thing you're going to do is spin out and hit nothing. So that's part of it. But also part of it is the goal. If the goal is just to get the very fastest lap time, then you're going to figure out how to run time trial laps. Where if you're out there with the time trial group, typically with NASA, you're grouped with cars that have similar power to you. At least you're sort of gridded up that way. So if nothing else, you're going to start out with kind of a flock that's going to be near you that maybe you can kind of find
Right.
somebody to sort of run with. And if you build a symbiotic relationship with somebody who's a little bit quicker down the straightaways, but you're pretty good through the turns, and you guys can usually work that out to come up to a good lap. So I would say with autocross and time trial both, you're sort of approaching it like a golfer trying to get a good run through. I shouldn't even use a golf reference, but you're trying to play a hole in golf that's pretty tough. You don't have anybody in your way. You don't have another group playing through or anything like that. So
Right.
You're trying to be all by yourself for the most part. If there's somebody near you, you can get a little bit of advantage off of with time trial. Do that, but for the most part, you're trying to get it all to yourself, which you never really do in a crowded field in endurance racing. It's rare, especially if you're out there making production. You're passing a lot of people under your own
Right.
steam. It's rare that you ever get a time trial lap, in a lemons race or something like that, or even a champ car race. If you're passing a bunch of people, then it's rare that you get the ideal lap where you get every turn the way you want it, which is the goal when you're doing time trial or something like that.
So maybe on the other side, should we be preparing our car for the endurance race to drive it as if it was a time attack, or should we know that it's going to break?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't like, to me, if I was setting my car up for a time attack and it was just going to be me driving it, I would set up a car that was not one that would make everybody else on my team happy. So right there, you're going to have differences with what people prefer with their setup. So I want a car that's loose and just crazy to try to keep under me, and everybody else on my team might want something that's a little easier to drive and not as wild. So that right there within the team, you'll have to kind of make compromises on setup right away for an endurance race. Does that make sense?
Yep. Setup wise, but what about mechanically? Should that be the goal, to have a car that you could run at 10 tenths for 20 hours? Or is that unrealistic?
Yeah, that should be your ideal. Because I mean, more and more, people have been saying this in professional endurance racing on TV, like when you watch the Rolex 24 or something like that. But I mean, for the past couple of decades, watching Le Mans, you hear the commentators say, like, oh, they run this like a sprint the whole time, not like an endurance race. And that's become the reality, even at our level. If you're one of the good teams, teams that are running up in the front, you are running a pretty brisk pace and nobody's taking a break. 4 or 5 years ago, there was a team that ran a second generation Camaro and what used to be Chump Car. And they had a sign on their dashboard that said 80%. They had enough motor, and they had kind of wormed their way into having enough exceptions to the rules where they had a car that was really dominant, and they really could run that car at 80% and not have to really ever push it anywhere. But for the most part, the rules keep evolving, and speed creep keeps happening. So it's less and less likely that you're going to be able to go out there and pace yourself. So I would say you want to build at least toward the ideal of having a car that can run pretty hard for 16, 24 hours.
Sounds like we got some work to do, Vicky. Time to head to the garage.
That's right.
All right, time to order some new parts. Okay. Beamer World, order coming in.
There you go.
Thank you, Ben.
All right.
Dominating with Dawson.
All right, Ben, we've got more jargon. We've got jargon galore. I have heard, and now this is when I'm out on a track, right? And that people say you should trail brake. And I'm sitting there saying, but I'm on the track. Shouldn't I track brake? What are they talking about?
This is a track, not a trail. This is a door. It's not a jar.
Exactly.
Trail braking is a kind of advanced technique. It's probably not something you're going to hear about the first couple of times you go out and race your car with lemons, or maybe the first few HPDE events that you do. But it's a technique that sort of lets you extend your brake zone sort of into turning in, so you sort of get to brake a little bit later, and you're using the brakes to help rotate the car. So you're aiding the first part of the rotation into the turn-in phase of the corner.
So it's when the way they teach you at the HPDs that I've been to is always brake in a straight line and then turn. Yeah. This is when the braking continues past turn in.
That's right. This is where so instead of doing a big old limo stop, I'm going to brake in a straight line, then I'm going to come off the brakes and heave this car into the corner. Which, to be honest, there are some people who do that and do it pretty well. I've never been a conscious trail breaker myself. Scott Speed of Formula One and global rallycross or whatever fame is the guy who's like, no, I don't trail brake. So there are plenty of people who are either not doing it or not thinking that they're doing it. So I unconsciously do it, but it's not something I'm thinking about all the time. But the idea is, the theory is that you maybe brake a little bit deeper and you trail off the brakes as you turn in. So proportionally with your turn in, you're still braking as you initiate turn in, you trail off as you're fully turned in, and then that's helping you rotate more quickly down to the apex so that you can get on the apex and get out quicker.
Okay, because the first time I ever personally heard this term, I'm at it was either my first or second HPDE, and it's raining. I'm in my front wheel drive GTI, and the guy who's right seat, the guy in right seat goes, "Wow, you're really good at trail braking." And I turn to him and say, "I have no idea what you're talking about." So
you were just trying to go a little bit deeper just to not mess up. You're like, I'm just seeing it stick it and brakes all the way through this corner.
exactly, it was like a typhoon out there. It was raining like 2 inches an hour, and we were out there doing an HPDE on the high banks of Pocono.
You were scared to come off the brakes at all.
I figured if my foot was on the brake, I wasn't on the gas, so it was safer.
Exactly. That's right. That's how you do it.
All right, so trail braking can be done on a track, not just on a trail.
Well, yeah, for sure. And there are plenty of people who are really deliberate and intentional about it, who use it to great effect. I usually end up doing it just because I'm trying to push a little bit deeper into the corner, and it's just part of the convenience of getting in there faster than the guy next to me. But there are people who are a whole lot better at it than I am.
Okay. Is there an advantage to doing it or trying to do it?
Well, yeah. I mean, you're gonna have a faster corner entry likely because you're still kind of in a
carrying speed in.
Yeah, you're in an earlier phase of your braking than the person who just braked all the way next to you and they be slowed down just enough to turn in, and you're still kind of slipping by as you're still in a braking phase and turning in at the same time. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone is the idea. But also, you're gonna need to be pretty good at it to actually be making any hay with it. But a great place to observe this and practice is if you ever go to the VIR. You can stand right there where they sell the sandwiches and stuff and watch coming out of turn 3 and going down into turn 4. Turn 4 is that hard left that usually takes a pretty late turn in. That's a great place to watch drivers because you get to just stand there and just watch their brake lights. And a lot of times you'll see brakes, blap, the lights comes off and the car turns in. But you start watching the race groups go by. If you're in a NASA weekend or something, you watch the guys who really got to get in that corner and come out fast. They're trailing in. And it looks crazy because it's really late. They're really late getting in, and they just whip it in. They're gone. It looks good. You watch the Spec Miata race or something. It's amazing.
So just in case some of our listeners are not quite up to IMSA standards, if you try to trail brake and you do it wrong, is there a bad outcome?
Yeah, you might totally overshoot the corner and find out what's on the other side of it that's not the track.
Okay. So
likely a tire wall or some gravel or a fence or an angry farmer, something like that.
Or a guy in a flag station.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. So trail braking on a 1 to 10 skill level before you should try trail braking. Is there don't try this until you're a 5 or?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, it's something to kind of think about practicing, like left foot braking or something like that. It's something to start thinking about doing on the street. So as you're thinking about, hey, how am I going to turn into this thing on the street, you can apply a little bit of trail braking there. So it's a good thing to sort of conceptualize, visualize, and then apply on the street. And then once it feels kind of fluid to you, and you're maybe like an intermediate HPDE student or it's your 3rd or 4th race, something like that, it's a good time to start jumping into it and really sort of being intentional about it and trying to learn how to do it on track, as long as it's not putting you in a dangerous spot. You don't want to drive over your head in the middle of the racetrack like, suddenly I'm going to try early apexing. I've never tried it before, and it's my second limits race. I'm going to do it this whole stint. That's probably not a great idea.
Yeah, it's like when the one guy was saying, hey, you need to do your heel toe, and it was a race, and I'm like, I am not doing heel toe in a race until I am 100% locked in.
I think it's really hilarious that somebody looked at you straight in the face and said, hey, how about you learn how to rev match this race?
Yeah. It's your second stint of the weekend. You should do this. I'm like, no.
That's why I can't quit endurance racing. There's so much comedy.
It is. And it's not just our team.
All of us. It's everybody.
All right. So trail braking. Now you know. Thanks.
Yep.
Dominating with Dawson.
Ben, I keep hearing people telling me, it's time for you to heel toe. It's time for you to rev match. It's time for you to blip. There's people on our team. They have a heel. They have a toe. They have no idea what a blip is. Can you help them?
Man, it sounds to me like somebody told you you need to learn how to do that right at the middle of a race, right?
I've heard rumors to that effect. Yes. I was ready. Was the quote? Yes.
Well, that's good. If somebody tells you that you're ready to learn how to rev match or shift with a heel toe action, it means that they think you're getting pretty good at this. So that's a good sign.
I don't like the brag.
The idea behind matching revs as you downshift. So say you're coming, at the end of the straightaway, Watkins Glen, and you're in fifth gear, and you need to come down maybe third gear to make it through turn one. Probably not, but either way, you're going to grab a gear. You need to go down a gear or 2 gears. The idea is that you're going to blip the throttle so that the revs are matched up to what they're going to be when you hit the lower gear. So if you're running 7,000 RPM, you're going to be coming off of fourth gear at 7,000 RPM. You're going to go down, and you're going to need to be in by the time you've gotten on the brake, come off the brake to get your next gear, you're going to be running maybe 5,500 RPM. So you're going to, as you're braking, you're going to blip the gas so that the revs are right there by the time you engage the next lower gear. Does that make sense?
Yep. You want to keep the engine of the engine speed for the next gear you're going into to match the wheel speed.
That's right. You want to match the driveline speed to what the outgoing wheel speed is going to be. The idea is, if you're driving a car that is got a bunch of power, that if you just go in there and jam it in the third gear and drop the clutch, that you're going to spin the rear wheels because they're not matched up. So the engine's going to be spinning a lot higher. You're going to spin the wheels. So that's the idea. But a lot of times you're going to need to do it if you have 100 horsepower Miata. The idea is that it's just a smoother approach. There are, just like left foot braking or other kind of advanced techniques, there are championship drivers who never match revs, never do this kind of stuff, and are plenty fast. So it's something that is great. It helps you break a lot less stuff. You don't break as many transmissions. You're driving in a way that's a lot more mechanically sympathetic. Okay. I'm not convinced it's any faster, but I do it.
Okay. So when you're doing your heel toe, I'm assuming the heel is on a pedal and the toe is on another pedal, because otherwise why are we calling it this?
What we're doing is we're talking about you got your foot on the brake as you're going through a brake zone. So you've got one foot occupied there, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, so hopefully we got one foot steady on the brake. We're also going to need to do what else we got to do in there? We got to do a downshift?
We have to do a downshift, and we have to apparently hit the gas pedal.
That's another foot, right?
That's another foot, yeah.
Dang. Getting busy. So you got your foot on the brake, and you're going to have to use the left foot. You got your right foot on the brake. You have to use your left foot for the clutch. So we're also going to need to blip the throttle in the middle of all this going on. So the idea with the heel and toe is that you've got your toe on the brake pedal.
Okay, toe on.
You're going to rock your heel over in whatever manner makes it so that you can reach a little bit of the gas pedal, just so that you can blip the throttle up. So you're going to be by the time you've been on the brakes for a while, the engine is coasting down, so you're not going to be at high enough RPM. So you're seeing to blip it a little bit. It's not like you're going to need to blip it all the way to your red line. We're talking about it this time because also you want to grab your downshift as late as possible in the brake zone. You're going to grab your downshift right before you need it. So that's why you see a lot of drivers kind of skipping from fifth to third, because they got a long brake zone and they're just going to go right from the next gear that they need. But so you're holding down the brake pedal this whole time, but your engine speed is going down, so you're going to need to pop it up. So you're going to just reach over and rock your heel over onto the gas pedal while you're holding the brake down. It's tough. Different cars are, pedals are spaced in different directions. They're different heights. You kind of have to just feel around for what works. But that's the idea.
And big feet, little feet, and race shoes versus high heels. There's some variables.
It's tough. Then another variable that makes it sort of harder to learn on the street until you really get kind of good at feeling it out is the fact that when you're applying the sort of force to the brake pedal to slow down on track, it's pushing the pedal a lot further down than you see on the street. So you're trying to practice on the street, you're gonna have to rock your heel way down to reach the gas pedal. It's doable, but just be aware that it's different angles with different kind of forces on track versus forces in the street.
So basically, you're trying to match the engine RPM to the wheel RPM so that you don't upset the car.
Right. You're trying to not buzz the driveline wheels, whether it's the front or the back. You want to have it all matched up, because if you got a bunch of power, it could really be a disaster. But even if you don't have any power, you want to do it just to smooth everything up.
Okay, and it'll have less impact on the drivetrain and everything, so life will be good.
Stuff. Yeah, you'll be more mechanically sympathetic to your car, and your wallet.
I like that part. That would be
Yes.
good. So if we do it wrong, how would we know?
I mean, a couple of wrong ways to do it are you go into a corner and you're reaching for your downshift and you go to reach for that blip and you just don't get a piece of the pedal. That's the most common failure. Is like, hey, I thought I was going to do it, and I just didn't get a piece of the pedal. You kind of have an ugly downshift. It's probably not the end of the world.
Okay.
Another way to get it wrong is to go in and get too much of a rev. And you just rev the motor. You needed to rev it to 5,000, and you rev it to like 7,500. Also, probably not the end of the world, but just kind of goofy, and you look like a dum dum.
So if the tire chirps.
Yeah, it might. But I mean, ultimately, you're just trying to get smooth with it and kind of anticipate how much throttle you're going to need for what RPM you're going to be coming out. I mean, it's not going to be the same for coming out of turn 7 at Road Atlanta as it is for coming out of turn 10 at VR. You just got to kind of figure out, all right, I'm going to be going this fast coming out of here, so I'm going to need about this much. So you just sort of learn as you go.
Okay, and my public service announcement: the most important part of heel toe is the brake pedal.
Absolutely. Everything else can wait. Everything else can wait but the brake pedal.
Yeah.
And so tell me, Bill, where like as far as your team at this point in March of 2020, where is everybody as far as learning how to heel toe?
We have a couple people who know what it means. We have one person who tries it and fails a lot.
Is that you?
No, not me. And
Okay.
we have one person who knows what to do and will not do it in a race until he is 100% confident. And that would be me. That would be me, yeah.
Do you drive a stick every day?
I do. And I actually, we got another car for my daily driver that doesn't auto blip for me to practice.
Oh, yeah. Turn the auto blip off.
I haven't figured out how, and that's what
Okay.
Yeah, I can't find it. So anybody who knows how to turn the auto blip function off of a BMW M240i, please see us at garageyearsandtraining@gmail.com.
There we go.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Dominating with Dawson.
All right, sir. We're back for another. We were looking at a video, which I'll post on the episode, of Ayrton Senna driving, and they were talking about how he has a habit of basically almost rocking the gas pedal on, off really, really quickly, which goes back to our earlier discussions of is smooth fast and it's smooth good or smooth not good. Now you self-prescribe yourself as you're not the smoothest of the driver, but I do believe even you were surprised a little bit by what Ayrton was doing with his footwork, especially on the throttle. So would you like to discuss that a little bit more? Maybe we'll get some more smooth as fast covered.
Yeah, sure. I was surprised when you sent me that link. I thought it was going to be maybe about how his hands kind of jerked around as he was yanking the car around. Because when you watch his videos, they're pretty frantic and frenetic.
Yeah.
So I thought that's what we were going to be looking at. And I had never paid attention to his throttle, because I mean I noticed how when you watch his video, it sounds kind of like bop, 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 coming out of the corner. But I guess I had just always assumed that it was a bumpy car or traction control or something like that. I didn't realize that it was him.
Or just bad audio and old video, right? Yeah.
Well, right. Yeah, I just kind of wrote it off to being like, oh man, things were kind of crappier back then. But yeah, I mean, the amplitude that guy's hitting the throttle pedal with is insane too. I mean, he's like, I couldn't wrap my head around it. He's like John Bonham from Led Zeppelin. Everybody used to think he had a double bass pedal, but he was just really rocking that foot. They call it rabbit foot, and that's sort of like what Senna was doing.
Yeah, pretty much. Maybe Bonham was a race car driver in hiding. Who knows?
He was a big hot rod guy, so I don't know. But yeah, I've definitely kind of found myself, slapping the throttle or stabbing it to try to get traction coming out of the corner. And they're always talking about him doing it on corner exits. And, I've done that, like maybe if I'm offline or trying to kind of get myself back up to speed coming out of the corner or rejoining traffic, just in a weird upset condition, maybe in the wet, kind of playing around with the throttle like that, but not as a habit. I mean, I went and watched a bunch of his video from different one lap onboards around different tracks after you sent that to me this afternoon, because I'm a huge nerd. And yeah, he kind of does it everywhere. Sometimes he gets a smooth exit or kind of a gradual exit. He's not doing it as much, but if it's an exit where there's kind of a fight for grip, does it a lot.
So is that something that you would think people learning or even advanced drivers should be trying to emulate, or was he just Ayrton Senna and we just bow when he walks by?
I mean, I don't know. That's what test days and track days are for. If you feel like it's something that's worth exploring, and you want to just see, like, if you got a car that you think might respond to like hummingbird taps on the throttle, or just hammering away at it and coming on and off. I mean, the typical wisdom from higher level coaches and people will tell you, as soon as you find your apex point, you want to have a constant arc into the apex. You want to pick up the throttle at the apex, maybe a little bit before, but as soon as you pick that throttle up, it needs to be on a trajectory to being fully applied or immediately fully applied, but you're not coming back off. It's no back and forth. You never hear that from a coach, that you kind of come on and off. So it's definitely a unique approach, but it worked for him. I think he would just jump in the throttle a little bit earlier and in a big way. Like, I mean, he was really open on the throttle, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you saw from the trace?
I mean,
It looked like he was really cracking the throttle wide open. So, I mean, he was gaining speed and coming back off. He didn't have quite enough grip, but I mean, he was just right back on it. And the guy compared it to an ABS system. An ABS is
a backwards ABS,
system,
right? Yeah.
Right. So yeah, reverse ABS, but he was just doing it himself. So maybe he was just that good that he could just sort of work it to a degree that none of us can. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I just think that his ability to not only cycle his foot that quickly, but probably his, they always talk about the butt dyno.
Yeah,
right?
butt dyno. Yeah.
Maybe he could just feel it that fast. I mean, I'm basically a blind butt dyno kind of guy, so I'm not going to try it anytime soon. But I think maybe it could be, like you said, it could be something you might want to try one day in an HPDE or a testing environment and just see. But I mean, he was such a unique driver with so much, I don't know if it's natural talent or just so much trained talent. It's going to be hard for me to imagine that being able to work for a large percentage of our population. I don't know.
No, I think that's like an nth percentile of folks
Yeah.
who would be able to apply it. But go try it. Go find out. You might be the person that can do it. Like, I am kind of a slave to, when I'm on the throttle, I'm not coming back out. So I think, and this was sort of his kind of let off valve for, I got too much. It was sort of how he would compensate, excuse me, with not having enough grip for all the throttle he wanted to apply. So I think my version of that is I probably get on the throttle a little bit later than he would have, but I'm still a little bit early. And instead of getting back off or letting up, I'll just kind of fight the wheel on the way out. That's kind of my pop off valves. I'm just going to kind of fight the wheel and give up some speed and grip just to stay pointed and not come off the throttle. That's usually my method. So I think he was doing a much more effective way of sort of coping with not having all the grip you want coming out of the corner.
Yeah. So for those of our listeners at home who are using Ayrton Senna as a model for what they should be doing, some caution is probably advised in doing that. And I think aiming for superhuman first and then trying for driving God might be a better path. I don't know. Just he definitely was a unique driver. It just definitely was fun to watch. I got to watch him live. I'm old enough, so
Yeah, I remember watching him on TV live. I mean,
live on TV. Yeah.
Yeah, I would watch it. It was just like him and Davey Allison were two drivers that stuck out in my mind. Just being like, those guys are just that much faster than everybody else. Like, I just never didn't get it as a kid. You're like, I see 40 cars out there, but this one guy is just going so much faster than the rest of them. So there was something else.
Yeah, something different. So
I think that video. What's that video called? It's like Senna's Bizarre Technique or something. It's a great video.
Yep. And there's two. There's that one, and then there's the one with the classic one where he's wearing his loafers going around in the NSX. But the one that I found has the audio right, so you can actually hear the engine as it's going, and it again shows that he's doing it. So
right. We talked about that because at least when I saw that, the first time 10, 15 years ago, I thought that he was kind of playing with the throttle. My assumption was that he was just used to having a car with 1 million pounds of downforce and huge grippy tires, and he was just in this lowly road car, just kind of trying to scratch around for the grip he was expecting from his Formula One car. That's kind of how I wrote that off. But yeah, it's a good illustration of what he's doing right there in the foot box.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd like to do before I make a final decision, not that I'm going to be trying to do this anytime soon, is I'd like to see a trace of his gas pedal and his steering input and see if there's any correlation between the two.
Yeah, that would tell you a whole lot, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, maybe. I don't know. It'll probably tell somebody who knows how to read data a whole lot. I'm not sure it'll tell me anything, but yeah, we'll see. So for those of you trying to be Senna, we've got 2 videos for you. Hopefully they'll help you. Ben Dawson. This is the one that everybody's been waiting for. I think that you and I are actually saying the same thing.
Okay.
We just say it in a different way. So it's come to my attention that getting to the apex of a turn is an insufficient condition. It actually matters not only to get to the apex, but the angle of the car at the apex is perhaps even more important than just hitting this fictional spot on the track. So what are your thoughts on that? And then we'll get into the discussion that I'm anticipating, which would be endless fun.
I mean, yeah. If it's just having your car at the apex of the corner doesn't mean you're doing it right. You could be backwards at the apex, right?
True. So,
ask me how I know.
Not on purpose, but it has happened. So I think one of the things that you have said repeatedly is that you like to be early apex so that you can get back to the gas as quick as possible.
Right. Or just maybe not a super early apex, but I want to have all my stuff done and I want to be back on the throttle across the apex. And usually that means a little bit earlier than
get it done as early as possible, not as late as possible, not the typical track day, track out. So
to satisfy what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, that means I got to have my car pointed the way I want to go. I need to get my car pointed at the apex, so it's not not coming broadside across the apex. I'm pointed toward track out, and what's going to make me an extra straightaway. Is that part of what we're talking about?
Yeah, it is. I think what happens is, in my mind, I think is your preference to have almost a point where you can go as straight as possible through the apex towards your track out? Is that kind of your goal? So you're trying to get your rotation done early?
Exactly. If I can be either getting into the throttle or just already full throttle coming straight across the apex, in my mind, I'm always thinking about just driving straight through an apex, which includes the inside curve and depending on the angle, it might include a couple of half a wheels inside the inside curve. You know what I mean? Whatever. I'm just kind of is the quickest way to shoot through there, which might be I got to take a ton of curve. Or I might just skip right past the curve. It doesn't always involve the curve, but it always involves me kind of thinking of it as I'm driving through what I see as the apex here.
So I guess my question is, if you picture a 90-degree turn, right? Your apex is really not on the inside of the track. It's actually in the middle of the track before the apex. What people would call.
I think you may be thinking about the bigger moment of rotation.
Yes. Is it that
I'm doing
the
most work? I'm doing the most work before the apex.
You're getting your turn done early. And
that's the work I'm getting done before the apex. That's exactly right.
Right.
At least I think I am. I mean, you could probably watch my video and like, what's he talking about? But at least that's what I'm idealizing in my mind when I'm
in your head. Yeah. So I think you and I are actually saying the same thing, because I'm treating the apex as the innermost point of the turn where I go to the curbing the most.
Right.
But in the same instance, as I was fighting my earlier condition where I like to do my early turn in, I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to do it late. And what I was thinking was my point of maximum rotational angle change is almost the same thing as you're saying. And we actually are saying, I think we're saying the same thing. We're just defining our terms different.
Well, I mean, when you talk about a late apex, I mean, that literally means like, here's the shape of the apex. If I'm coming this way, instead of hitting this, this is the actual apex, or this would be the early apex. Apex, that means you're coming across the end of the actual apex, right?
Yep. The after the geometric.
Right. So here's the geometric, here's the early, here's the late. So I'm still talking about coming in, getting the car rotated. If I'm lucky, getting a little bit earlier, just right here coming across. But I'm never like trying to come around the back of the corner unless the course dictates it. That's the only way to get around a decreasing radius corner would demand a really late apex or something like
that. But maybe it's a different term then. So, but you're trying to get your rotation done as quickly and early as possible so you can get back on it with our low horsepower cars typically.
Right.
And really, does it matter to you where you clip the curb? It matters more that you're on it early.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it matters where I clip the curb, because if it's, obviously if it's way too early, then I'm going to have to let off or overrun the track out. So
Right.
I mean, that's the main thing I'm thinking about. I'm just thinking about, hey, how can I get out of here and be back to flat footed as quickly as I can? Considering the curving, considering the angle of the corner, considering what the exit looks like, that sort of thing.
Okay. So I've been doing some homework because I'm trying to keep up with my Dominating with Dawson. So I found this awesome podcast, and I'm going to bring this up while I'm looking. So there's this podcast that I listen to that is an instructor, and he has a podcast where he instructs motorcycle racers. And his name is Ken Hill. So some of the stuff doesn't apply, but I figure if anybody's going to know the bad signs of how to do things wrong on a racetrack, it's going to be a guy on a motorcycle before it's going to be a race car guy.
Those people are crazy. They got to know what messed up is.
Right. So what he referred to, which is something I hadn't seen or heard of yet, is there's 3 types of turns. There's entry turns, and then there's exit turns, and then there's neutral turns where it doesn't really matter. So on an entry turn, he worries more about carrying in the entry speed, right? And on an exit turn, he cares more about maximizing his exit speed.
What factors would you think would play into how you prioritize that?
Well, I think it depends on a little bit on what type of motorcycle he's got, but let's pretend we're talking about cars. It depends on what kind of car you have and what kind of grip you have and what kind of horsepower you have. But I think it could also depend on what's coming after the turn.
Ding, ding, ding.
Right? But,
or what led up to, or what led up to this?
What led up to it? Like if you're at the end of a really long straight and you're going into a series of turns, it's going to be an entry turn.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But I think the exit turn is more typical for what we do. More tracks have more exit turns. What do
you think an exit turn would be, like turn 7 at Road Atlanta?
Turn 7 at Road Atlanta, turn 12. I'm sure there's 4 or 5 of them at VIR that you can quote, but
I didn't even bring it up this time. But there are turns where you want to prioritize how you get, like ones where like, hey, I don't really care how the entry of the turn goes, but I want to make sure I absolutely nail the exit. Right. Get on the gas as quick as possible, like turn 7 at Road Atlanta, because you might end up, you come out of the turn 2 or 3 miles an hour faster when you really nail it. You get all the way out to that curbing, you're flat out, got the wheels straight faster. 2 or 3 miles an hour there can net a larger yield by the time you've gone through the gears and you're at the top end, at the far end of the track before you brake. So
yeah.
That can be a bigger deal, and that's why people prioritize it, because they might be able to pull off a move that they weren't going to get if they didn't get that corner as well.
Right. So I think your natural early rotation, less concern about apex, is the more typical turn that's an exit turn. Oh, no.
I am still absolutely concerned with hitting the geometrical apex or as close to it as I can. Like that's not something I'm compromising. It just might mean that I might back up my brake entry. Like somebody right next to me might be able to brake at the 2, but I'm going to brake at the 2.5 just to give myself enough time to get slowed, get the car turned the way I want, and then just be hauling it across the apex. I'm still going to locate my car at the apex as hard as I can. Like I'm still going to maximize the geometrical advantage. Just how I get there. I might not maximize my entry by braking at the very last second and turning where I've got the very, I think that the idea where you brake at the last second, then you're kind of hit your speed. What's the opposite of an apex? Is it nadir? N-A-D-I-R?
So. I think so.
So you hit your lowest speed right.
It's Latin.
That's your approach. If you're maximizing your entry, you're going to hit your lowest speed at the apex right where you pick up a throttle and come back through. Which is like the time trial approach. My approach is definitely, I'm always thinking about race traffic more. My approach is where I would rather kind of eat it a little bit on the way in, be pretty methodical about getting the rotation done and getting back on the throttle sooner than the people around me who are kind of trying to maximize their approach, because they might have beat me in the car. Still probably not likely, because I'm still probably better at it than they are. I'm still going to get it anyway. But what I'm saying is that you might lose a little bit on the entry, but you're going to come out harder. But I'm still going to locate and place the car at the apex, and I'm still I'm gonna hit the apex hard enough that at track out, I'm gonna end up at track out whether I want to be out there or not. I'm not gonna steer myself.
Yeah, you're not gonna just drive. You're not gonna drive.
Land out there. Yeah, right. I'm gonna steer with my feet to get out there pretty much.
But wouldn't your typical approach to a turn have your minimum speed be prior to the apex?
I guess. I mean, aren't people who are like, I'm braking all the way down to the apex and then right at the apex is where I pick up the throttle again? I mean, I think that's where they hit their lowest speed, right? I don't know.
Well,
I'm never thinking about that because I'm not trying to do that.
You kind of seem to be, you want to get to the gas as early as possible, ideally to maximize your exit speed. So I think, at least the way I've interpreted it and the way I've seen it in my head, is you're on the gas before you hit what the track apex is, but after where you've done your maximum rotation turn.
Yeah, I've already done the stuff where you have to get the slowest before the apex.
Yeah.
Just so hopefully somebody else who's had to slow down a little bit more than me, just so hopefully I can get them on the way out. Like it's all a traffic strategy. I mean, I also know how to do it where you maximize your braking, you break down to the last second, all that sort of stuff. I can do it that way too, but typically, if I'm practicing or if I'm driving the race traffic, I'm prioritizing just trying to maybe make a little bit of an awkward entry just so I can really get as much throttle as I can. Maybe make myself a little bit of an extra bit of straightaway on the way out of the corner.
Yeah, lengthen the time at speed or time.
Yeah, lengthen the amount of time I'm wide open, because usually, like we always talk about, I'm usually driving a car that doesn't have that much power compared to the rest of somebody else in the field that I'm competitive with. So I'm usually just trying to maximize how much time I can have the wheels opened up, have the wheels straight, and the throttle pressed. So that's when you make your best time.
But you're still, when you're thinking about your throttle application, the way that the way that I've seen it taught is you turn the wheel to your maximum, and if you're at the limit, you can't press the gas until you start to unwind the wheel. Is that
the whole thing that they should be proportional, right?
Well, you don't go back to gas until you're unwinding, because otherwise you're pushing your tires.
Oh, right, and that is the ideal, and that's something to live by 100% if you're trying to win your DE trophy, which is putting your car back on the trailer and never feeling uncomfortable. But no, I mean, there's definitely times where I've still got some steering angle by the time I'm jumping on the throttle. Like we talked about before, like turns are just something to get in between me and being wide open. You just got to handle it, because it's just turns are just like speed bumps to me.
Yeah. Minimize the impact and maximize.
Yes, all I'm ever thinking about is how do I get my wheels straight again, and how do I get my foot back on the throttle. Like anything between that is just some kind of inconvenience I got to deal with.
So, Vicky and Jen, is that approach similar to what you guys do when you're coming to a turn, or? Because I'm not insulting you in any way. Ben's faster through turns than all of us. So
I'm not faster through turns.
Exactly.
Than anybody. I'm the slowest person going through turns.
What is your feeling when you go into a turn, Jen?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, it depends
not
how many
again.
cars are there. Certainly at the HPDEs, it's a lot different, but in Lemons, sometimes it's crowded, so it can occasionally be terrifying. But I mean,
do you say cuss words when you're going into the turn?
No, I don't. I do not.
Vicky does.
But everything that you learn at the HPD does not apply, and you know that. So it's like
some of it does, but definitely driving. I think we've discussed that before. The driving.
The line, there is no line.
No, it's there.
Right.
You just can't use it.
Right.
Well, no, the line shows up on Sunday.
Yeah, after everybody crashes.
There's no line on Saturday.
Yeah, in my mind, what you're doing at an HPD event is you're just building a driving toolkit that you have with you all the time.
Right.
But then you can take to the race. But if you've done like 2 or 3 or just even a handful of HPD kind of events, your toolkit isn't very full yet. There's skills you're going to develop along the way. But it's absolutely worth doing. But I think definitely the stuff you pick up at a DE is way more useful than the stuff you're probably not learning in the race traffic and limits. Like, it's fun to be in race traffic in an endurance race, but it's not a place to learn either. Like, I can understand being terrified if I went into this not knowing anything about driving. Like, I showed up kind of a pretty developed driver, but if I showed up not knowing anything, I would probably be pretty weirded out by all the traffic and limits.
Yeah.
That was our first HPDE.
Yeah.
I mean, that was our first Lemons race.
But there's plenty of people who do that. But I think if you find racing and you think like, oh, this is cool, I want to compete at this, then it's likely that the best way to go do it is to go do some HPDE events where you get an instructor in the car with you who can tell you, like, all right, you can get away with this. Like, all right, we're going to go. Hey, you're not letting off the throttle again. Usually a good HPDE instructor is going to help you get quicker and say, like, all right, they'll help you get rid of your habits. Like, Vicky, no coasting. I'm going to let you need to stay on. Like, I'll be in there like, hey, stay on the throttle. Don't get off that gas until I tell you. Usually that kind of thing. You have an instructor who helps calibrate your driving. Like, all right, here's what you can get away with in this car, because they know. They're like, all right, I'm going to get in the street car with somebody and have a pretty good idea of where they can get away with. And there are certainly times where I'm in the car with a student at an HPDE, and I'm like, I'm going to tell this guy to brake it to 5. And then he breaks it to 5, and then we got to drive 2 brake markers up in the corner. And I'm like, okay, well, this guy knows how to use the brake pedal. So, the instructor is always calibrating themselves to the student too. But, an HPD instructor can definitely help you get rid of some of the bad habits like no coasting, or all right, you can definitely get away with carrying this gear through this sort of thing.
Well, okay. Well, on the subject of the HPTE, when I had gone in with some of the bad habits that I knew I had, and of course they were pointed out, but I already knew that I had them. I think when I went into my HPTE, they usually have a checklist that, for you to complete in the Great Lakes one. Okay.
Yeah. So
but you really can't do them all. I mean, you can try, but it's probably best just to really focus and say, this is what I'm going to accomplish while I'm here. If I try to accomplish everything, it's just going to be a wreck.
Oh, right. That's totally
right.
So when I was doing NASA, they had a little book, like a little passport, like it was like
a
passport. So you get your passport filled out, and I think as you go through the different pages, maybe different items get added. But yeah, it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on there, and you want to approach what you're comfortable approaching at every HPDE. So I mean, if you're like, hey, I'm showing up this time. I've been working on threshold braking on the street. I think I got a good idea. It's everybody works that stuff at a different speed, but that's why that I think NASA's great for having that kind of that book. It's like, hey,
that book is great.
Skills. But yeah, don't beat yourself up if you're not knocking everything out of the park the first time you show up. I mean, keep going to DEs. There's so much inherent value to them as far as developing you into a more competitive driver. Like not to say I'm Mario Andretti, but I showed up in this stuff already being pretty good at it, and I've had a blast doing it because it's just like, they're just rolling on these fools who have never been to DE. So I don't know. I mean, that's one way to go dominate is to get really good at DEs and then keep racing too.
That's why when we were talking about going to the HPD 1 with you and Jen, you're like, well, I already took HPD 1. I'm like, well, just
no, we did. I did. I bulldozed. I do apologize. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, just because you took it once doesn't mean you got everything you need to get out of it. Sometimes you need to hear the same thing twice, and sometimes a different instructor. And at least when I talked to the NASA head instructor, he said it usually takes 3, 4, 5 times on average before you progress up. I
definitely did every HPDE 1, 2, 3 group more than once. I think I was in HPDE 3 like for a while before I finally was like, hey, let me say the instructor clinic. So it's not a race, and it's not like they just don't give them away like they do black belts in the strip mall karate place. You know what I'm saying? It's a different deal. I think there's more life and death stuff at stake than there probably is at karate stuff we do. So hopefully, if you have responsible NASA region and responsible instructors, they're working with you to help teach you and also being pretty safe. Because it's not a one and done thing where they just show up and like, all right, she did it one time. I definitely was in each one of those groups for more than one event for sure.
I had gone to Watkins Glen, and Watkins Glen was a bit of a scary track for me. I mean, it was a fun track, but it was a scary track at the same time.
Totally.
And I told my instructor, I said, I would rather not focus on speed as much as technique. So I chose not to go all out on that track and just really, really focus on my proper shifting and proper balance of the car more than I wanted to focus on other things.
Right.
So I actually took that track slower than I should have.
No, that's a great idea. If you show up to a DE and like, hey, here's what I want to focus on, you can tell your instructor that. Your instructors they've got the chops to like get you around the track. If you want to go around Watkins Glen at 90 miles an hour, that's what your instructor is there for. They'll watch at the back for you. They'll let you know when traffic is coming. But totally, no instructor is ever going to be like, we're not doing that. I mean, I've absolutely made drivers go like, all right, hey, we're just going to run the whole track in fourth gear. And of course, we're slow going around the track, but it's also a DE. So it's a lot of people get too worked up about, I'm too slow, or I'm not doing this or that at an HPDE. You paid a crap ton of money to go there, and so did everybody else. So, if you don't get the point by right away, you got to give the other driver some slack. And by the same token, if you're behind some driver you think is really slow, everybody paid. Everybody's learning at a different rate and absorbing different information in different ways. So, a lot of cases that I see that just all the time where I'm behind another car, you can tell that instructor is just talking to the other student around the track, and that's all they're doing is because you can see the instructor like we're talking to them. So it's real easy as an instructor. You get to watch all this stuff sort of happen in real time, but there's so much stuff going on at DE. Everybody paid to be there, so it's a great place to go learn, go be patient, and just absorb as much stuff as you can. And if you can, ride with people, for sure.
You did get a ton faster that weekend, by the way, Vicky, even though you weren't.
Yeah.
You said you weren't, but you did.
Yeah.
No, I think it's great to set limits. That's a really good idea. Like, hey, I'm not trying to go 130 down the straightaway.
I'm not trying to tick off 5 or 6 things out of my book today. No,
that's great.
I only want to do these are the areas that I'm uncomfortable with, and these are things I really feel like I need to master in order to move on to this other stuff to kind of tick in.
Yeah, I think it's great to show up with a focus. Like, how many racers do we all know from endurance racing who they're all great in so many different ways, but they're so unfocused that they just can't function as a team, or they can't keep their car together. So one of the biggest things you can bring to the track is focus. So that's fantastic.
I'm right here, Ben. I can hear you. Jen, what do you think about approaching to turns? Is that kind of how you envision?
Yeah, I mean, Vicky has it right with technique, because I mean, if you have a really good technique, the speed will come. Do you know what I mean? Like, to do the speed before the technique, it doesn't work. Do you know? So I guess my only hope with all of the HPDEs that we do or have done is to work on just getting better at going into turns and coming out of turns, and because your speed will get faster if you do it right.
Yes.
So yeah,
technique breeds speed.
But I just want it to be natural enough that I don't have to think about it as much, because right now I yeah, exactly, like with driving a manual.
Do you drive a manual on the street, Jen?
I didn't learn how to drive a manual. I lived on the track.
Oh, wow. Oh, what an adventure. I can't imagine.
Okay, wait a minute. To be fair, I had a few hours on the road.
Okay, all right. Hey, that's great.
She had a week. She had 1 week.
That's wild.
I didn't say we had the best judgment sometimes.
No, we didn't.
We actually sent a car down to Delaware for her to practice a stick, and we never took it back. So she still has the car.
So, but now it's muscle memory. Like now, that's not the issue anymore. But like, forget about what an apex was when I got in the first race. It was, wait a minute, let me go into first gear.
Yeah, it's true that prioritizing a corner based on like all this sort of stuff we're talking about is kind of a little bit of high theory as far as when it comes to performance driving. Also, you did your first race like, I'm just trying to find third gear. I'm just trying to keep the car and get hit by other cars. We're sort of like sitting high up on the toadstool talking about like, let me prioritize this quarter. Like, I mean, yeah, there's definitely a whole lot more basic
I got to tell you,
stuff.
Jennifer even kept stalling on a particular hill going up. And when she would go up, the people in the booths would just raise their arms up and cheer for her because she made it up that turn.
Oh, my God.
Wait, was this New Hampshire or?
Yes.
New Hampshire.
When you said that going up a hill, I was like, I've never been there, but I'm like, that seems like a kind of place that would have a hill you might not make.
Yeah, they're up there going, come on, you can do it. Yeah. She made it up and we would cheer her because she did it.
I did it.
Oh, that is why I love Lemons so much. Is that story right there? Like, it's such a fun series just for stuff like that.
Because a man would never be able to walk out of that unashamed.
Oh, I would. I wouldn't care. It wouldn't bother me at all. I think that's so much fun. Like, but
I'm
I love
quite sure when they said that was like one of her first races. I'm sure they really appreciated it even more.
No, but that's great. That's a great thing about Lemons is it could be your first day driving a stick. It could be your first day ever sitting in a race car, and you're out racing.
Or all of the above.
Yeah, I love it.
Trial by fire.
But yes, my hope for the HPDE is to commit enough muscle memory to not have to think about it as much while I'm racing.
Yeah, you want all of that blocking and tackling kind of stuff to be just mechanical. You want it to be automatic. So that way, once you got that stuff down, then it's just all head games and traffic. You are just every turn, I am messing with people. Like, I don't know if everybody gets that, but like once you get at this stuff and you can drive faster than some of the other people, it's like, I am just going to screw with them endlessly, and that's what I do.
But then there's getting into a different car each time too, because that's been an issue.
Oh, see, I've got a bucket here that I call this bucket of blessings. And I put getting to drive different cars and getting to drive in the wet and all these kind of stuff. I put all that into the bucket of blessings. Where's your bucket?
Just think about how much you're learning with all these different vehicles, but
Yeah,
you're doing a crash course in it.
Part of my anxiety is coming because you get used to one vehicle and then you get in another one and it's different and it's
the differences make it great.
She was very disappointed when she got out of the car she was practicing on in Delaware, and she gets into the race truck and says, "This clutch is totally different."
What?
That's like a second gen.
Yeah. It was.
Those transmissions are so weird too. That generation of truck.
Yeah. So she's going from a BMW to a Chevy S10. I'm like, yeah, they are different. Yep. A little bit.
You know, I bet there's like no rushing to shift in that truck, is there?
No. Don't bother. It won't matter.
Or steering it.
Yeah, or steering.
Brakes are on fire on occasion.
No.
Why do you
we
keep
think we
bringing
might
that
have fixed the brake problem. We're hoping we fixed the brake problem.
up? Very well. We're going to see how this goes. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Ben.
Thank you.
Right.